If you're enjoying the Trees and Lines podcast, please head over to our Trees and Lines LinkedIn page and give us a follow. Thanks. Welcome to another episode of Trees and Lines. Today, we're diving into the world of vegetation management and grid reliability with a special guest, Rachel Steudle, Director of Operations at DTE Energy. With a background in corporate strategy and economics, Rachel has been at the forefront of DTE's ambitious tree trim surge, a multi-year effort to enhance power reliability in the greater Detroit area. Have a listen. Hope you enjoy.
Welcome to another episode of Trees and Lines. Thrilled to have Rachel Steudle, Director of Operations at DTE Energy. Rachel, welcome.
Thank you, Tej. Thrilled to be here.
Oh, great.
Hi, Rachel.
Great.
Hey, Phil. How are you? Tej, where are you?
Oh, I'm in Houston, but I was actually in Alabama yesterday playing golf, and I'm so down about it because, yeah, you know how you get an invite? Like I got an invite to this. I got to just quickly share the story. I got an invite to, a pretty exclusive group of guys, good golfers. I've played with one of the guys before. I had a good showing, so I got the look to go to their house in this quaint little town. And I had to coach my kid's soccer game at Saturday morning, so I could only go for one night. So I went for 24 hours. I played a round of golf. I could not have played worse than I played. I'm so angry, and you're still trying to be social, and these guys are all having a great time because everybody's playing really well, and I'm internalizing like so much anger, and so it was very frustrating. So I'm back.
Oh no, I'm sorry.
Yeah, yes, I'm back trying to solve energy related problems.
There you go.
So,
yes.
I guess we'll hop right in, Rachel. You're obviously DT's got a big footprint. You guys cover a lot of territory. Your path into kind of leading the vegetation management group has been pretty interesting because you came from the corporate strategy side of things. Is that right?
That is correct. Yeah. So I joined DTE in 2015 through the corporate strategy team and spent about 5 years there, really focused on the electric utility, and then had the opportunity to move into the tree trim organization in 2019 and have been part of that team ever since. And it's been a fantastic experience, but definitely unique when you think about many of my peers and folks who are in the organization.
Yeah. What is something that because it is a different world. Like both you and I are both transplants, right? Into this industry and the sector. So, can you highlight anything specifically that really surprised you about your time in the vegetation side of the utility business?
There certainly is a lot. I think one of the most interesting and valuable ones is the concept of how close we are to the customer. And so this is something that someone actually shared with me prior to me moving into the group, but I think it just holds true now. Is you think about the purpose of almost any electric utility, it's to provide safe, reliable power to their customers. And at the end of the day, from a veg management perspective, that's what we're doing day on and day out, is how do we ensure we're clearing vegetation away from the power lines, making sure people have safe and reliable power. But we're also doing that by having to go into every person's backyard, onto their property, and touching and honestly modifying the aesthetics of their property. And so that aspect of how are we interacting with our customers is both really valuable, and it's the purpose to the program. But it also, you day to day have personal interactions that you have to be sensitive to, and how do you strike that balance with customers as you talk about the need to trim their trees to ensure the reliable power.
I'm sure the people doing the tree work have more contact with DTE customers than DTE does directly.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is especially true, Phil. And, DTE serves over 2 million electric customers in Southeast Michigan. We have a number of urban areas that we are interacting with customers. We're also up into the thumb of Michigan, so more of a rural area. So it's also a very diverse community that we serve, and how you speak with those customers and the way that they view, the tree work that we do varies, and it's important for us to identify those differences and how do we really, again, meet everyone where they need to be in terms of their property, but also continue to work towards the clearances we strive for to deliver the power.
Yeah. So you came in 2019. That means you came in midstream of what the company was calling the surge. Can you tell us a little bit about that, the surge, your enhanced program?
Yeah, so I joined the tree trim program within a couple of weeks of us receiving our first approval associated with the tree trim surge. And so the surge refers to a funding mechanism that DTE proposed and then received approval for through the Michigan Public Commission to increase our funding over a 7-year period, really focused on how do we go through and trim our entire service territory to a consistent specification and then maintain that specification on a regular maintenance cycle. So I joined in 2019. The goal of the surge was to be completed by 2025. And I'm really excited that we're on track. We've got the plan, we've got the schedule in place to be able to do that by the end of this year. So we're going to be able to deliver on the commitment that we made back in 2017 and 2018 when this idea was really first presented.
Yeah, good. So you weren't on cycle before the surge,
Yeah.
I assume, or
Yes.
No fixed schedule, but you are re-ended the surge in 5 years. So
Yeah.
tell us what were the results? Were you happy, disappointed?
I would say it's been overwhelmingly a success. Oftentimes, when you propose these big transformations within a program, the targets and the idea of what success looks like changes over time. And so some of the highlights for us have been that we've seen that areas that we've trimmed experience 40% or more improvement in their reliability after trimming. We also have seen that the cost of the work from an on-cycle perspective, once you've gone in, you've trimmed the work, you've gotten that first clearance, we're seeing the work is now relatively less expensive. But if you say, hey, where have been some of the lessons learned or areas that we said, oh, that wasn't exactly what we expected. Certainly costs being one of them. We're recognizing that while we are seeing savings, it's not nearly as dramatic. It's what we had expected to begin with. And it somewhat is coupled with just you think about the dynamic of the market over this time, right? We had COVID, we've had inflation challenges. I think that many utilities, similar to DTE, are ramping up their investments in veg. And so the market's becoming more competitive. The need for trimming resources is higher than when we started this journey. Again, a lot of these ideas and forecasts were based in a world in 2017. Things just look a lot different in 2025 now.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, I imagine expenses are way up on the crew sides.
Yeah, speaking of that, Rachel, then can you talk a little bit about what the relationship then is like with your local commission and the process in which you've gone about to present the case for an inflationary environment, the need to harden your grid, et cetera, and how they have, processed this idea of, hey, we know reliability is important, but we're trying to keep prices for our end customer down. And so there's always that kind of fine balance. How have you guys kind of navigated that complex relationship?
Yeah, it's a great question, Taj. And DT, from a tree trimming perspective, has had a really positive relationship with our commission. And I think that really stems from our ability to demonstrate value and improvement. So again, we proposed the surge and started it in 2019 and have been able to demonstrate year after year. Here's the improvement, right? I talked about once we've trimmed an area, this is the relative improvement that we're able to show. We have a robust data analytics group that's really driving towards how do we show value and demonstrate that. And so And this gets a little to my background. So I'm not an engineer, and I didn't come up through the operations. I'm actually an economist. And so I think a lot about like data and how do you have that tell your story. And so when we think about the relationship we have with our regulators, it's how do we show them the value and make that use case. And again, the program has been able to do that and has been able to also show here are the challenges we're encountering from a cost perspective. Here's the granular data. We were able to do a bottoms up analysis just to show here are all the elements that are impacting our costs relative to what we thought it would cost before. And then unique for us from just how do you balance affordability and these investments is we funded the surge partly through what we refer to as a regulatory asset. So a portion of our investments is actually amortized over a 14-year period. So that allows for us to not just from an O&M perspective be directly passing through to customers' rates these significant expenses, but to spread them over a longer period of time. And one that, helps from a rate shock perspective, but it also better aligns with you think about the benefits that we're presenting through the program. They're going to be long, ongoing benefits from reliability, cost of the work that this investment is going to yield.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
So you went through the surge. Apparently you have greater clearances and you've done it throughout the system. So what's next?
Yeah, it's a great question, Phil, and it's one that we're spending a lot of time thinking through right now. Like I said, at the end of this year, we'll have concluded the surge, and there's been a lot of discussion on should there be more from a veg perspective that we should be thinking about. The surge focused on really how do we reclaim our right of way, maintain a common specification across the territory, and then get on a regular cycle. But there's discussion of should we be doing more with our clearances? So should we be expanding our specification in a certain way? Should we be looking to get more aggressive on the floor? It's an area that for us, I would say, did a good job around the lines, but along the floor have opportunity. We also think that there's huge opportunity to focusing now more outside the right of way. We've defined our right of way. How do we look outside of it? A lot of that is coupled with what's the right balance. We talk about affordability. We talk about reliability. So there's this dynamic of thinking about what more could we bring from a reliability, but is that investment the right thing to do? And certainly this is coupled with DTE's going through, I would say, a transformational period overall in terms of its investments in the grid. So it's not just around tree trimming, but once you remove the vegetation, how do you think about your hardware and your infrastructure, and how do we continue to make progress on upgrading those at the same time? So there's a lot of discussion taking place, but at least within our program, we're thinking about what more could we do, and then aligning, is that the right area to continue to lean in?
Yeah. I'm curious because this is just top of mind because it's just happening real time. South Carolina and the Carolinas have been hit with wildfires, right? We're coming on the back of what's happening in California. How much of this, these incidents and this scale of event, how much of that has been a topic of conversation within, the organization at the leadership level, and B, how much of that gets presented as I don't know if rationalization is the right word, but supporting, tertiary supporting information for the case of like investment to the commission, right? Even though your risk profile in DTE is maybe more winter related events, right? Yeah. But let's just say that you're dealing with a similar type of stuff. Like how much of that has been spoken of in the hallways at DTE?
Yeah. So first, just from a wildfire perspective, although we're surrounded by the Great Lakes, there certainly is the recognition, and we've gone through the exercise of what risks do we see? Are we at risk of a large wildfire? While it is minimal, I think that you can say, hey, it's a 1 in 1,000-year event. But if that one event hits, like that is very, very concerning. So we are thinking through it even from the wildfire perspective. But I think what it also just underpins, Tej, is these extreme weather events, our risk to natural disasters is great. And while it might look a little bit different for Michigan, again, wildfire is probably not the most pressing, but significant ice storms. We've seen increases in the occurrence of tornadoes. The external environment recognizes that. And that is really why there is this call to action. Should there be more from a veg management perspective? How do you harden the grid? It's just doing so in a pragmatic way that balances the affordability of our customers and also just, I think, balances the ramp up in the investments that we're making. So, I think Centerpoint's one that everyone can look at from a utility perspective and say, how do we ensure that we are able to navigate that type of event and restore our customers and communicate? So these types of events taking place across the nation are ones that every utility is monitoring and starting to ask the questions. And frankly, it's then what I go to my vendors and talk to them about as well. They see it from a different perspective, but they're the partners that we'll have to rally with if we find ourselves in an extreme, million customer storm. It's going to be all hands on deck to address.
I went to a conference of engineers, and 99.9% of the vendors in the exhibit hall had the word resiliency plastered. It used to be reliability. The word now is resiliency.
Yeah.
And those are those major events you were talking about.
Yeah.
Rachel, one thing I wanted to call out, as something that I've observed very positively in my research, in our research, and sort of preparing in our chat with you is the support that you and your team have from DTE's leadership, right? I haven't necessarily observed that universally across the market. I think utilities have different structures, different challenges. Some are very supported, some are not. Some look at the right of way as liability. Some of them look at it as an asset. Talk to us a little bit about the culture at DTE, right? From top down, left, right, and how you guys, being so big and having so many boots and bodies moving in and out of the organization to support this, how are you guys able to keep that level of commitment, organization, and continuity within your teams?
Yeah, and I think it really started with, at least at this level, with the approval of the surge and the recognition that this was the opportunity for us to really invest in the grid. And, DT's been investing in our grid for years prior, but I would say that this was a inflection point for the company and just the volume of dollars that were going to start to flow through for grid investments and set then the pathway to be able to mimic it for some of our larger capital projects. But there was hey, we're making some big promises and the commission's now approved a significant ramp up in our funding. How do we have the right level of oversight and attention to this to set up for success? And my predecessors really did a fantastic job of advocating for the program, understanding what needed to happen, what success would look like, and then putting the right people in place to ensure that. And there's been some changes throughout the years, but a number of the people on the team are the ones that started this surge with us and will, I hope, continue with the program moving forward. But I'd say we had buy-in from our most senior leaders. We had commitment of strong, dedicated directors who really set us on this path and continue to highlight the importance of the program. And I became the director in 2023 and was thrilled, but recognized the big shoes that I had to fill of the folks that had been leading the program prior to me coming into the role.
That's great. You talked a little bit about data, important, obviously, like it gives you such an advantage if you can look at your system visually, numerically. Where do you think you guys are in your life cycle in terms of being on top of the data, collecting it, incorporating it, managing it on a day-to-day? Like, where is your relationship with AI and tools and all that kind of good stuff?
The program was very lucky, and key people had the foresight to say, hey, as we execute the surge, we're going to need new tools to be able to just manage it more effectively, but also to collect data as we go. And so at the same time that the surge began, we also implemented a electronic work management system such that we're then planning all of our work electronically. It then is what the trimmers are interacting with when they go out and trim the work. And then on the back end, then that's what we use from a QA QC perspective. And so as we've moved through this program, we've been able to collect down to the tree level data on what was trimmed, what was removed, what was the species, the quantity of it, which has really enabled us as we start to look towards the end. And as Phil said, what's next? Perform a postmortem and say, hey, this is what we expected. Where were things different? Where did we maybe not get as much as we had thought? What's the dynamic around, hey, we thought that this much of the work was going to be in the front lot versus the back lot? Well, what does the actual data show us? And that's been so valuable. And that's like on the tree inventory side. And complementing that, we also implemented a vendor timesheet system. So every single hour that's worked on our property is tracked, regardless if it's on maintenance, if it's on reactive work, if it's on planned work. We have that level of data, which really has allowed us to then go down and look at productivity, identify trends, and be able to better forecast what should we expect for a workload, for resources into the future. So I'd say from a just data collection perspective, I'm very, very happy and very grateful with where we're at. When we look towards what's the future and you hear about the technology around AI, remote sensing, and LiDAR, we're starting, I would say, to dabble in that space. We made a significant investment in LiDAR in 2021, have leveraged that to start modeling and understanding what would be what we refer to as kind of an appropriate risk-based cycle. So rather than saying, hey, everything should be on a standard 5-year, recognizing some areas probably would benefit from a more frequent 4-year trimming. However, there are also probably areas that don't need to be trimmed every 5 years, and that could be trimmed at 6 or 7 years, depending on the density, the tree type, the reliability of that area. So we're at the beginning stages. It's really, I think, understanding, Tej, what's the scalability of some of this. It'd be great to every single year be able to invest in LiDAR and get new volumetric picture. But it's very, very expensive. And then what's that trade-off? Or similarly, of could I invest in drones to be my QA/QC, but is that faster and more cost effective than boots on the ground? I don't think we're there yet, but I'm certainly interested in seeing where that technology goes in the next 5 to 10 years.
I was surprised that, maybe not unique to you, but certainly different than most utilities, an older system with just a lot of open wire, secondary services. Just curious, are you looking at engineering alternatives to tree work, or have you done the analysis?
I would say we have not done the analysis. It is certainly something that I often bring up, and I would love for us to start finding some opportunities where you're spot on, Phil. The second wire, the open wire secondary is really an area that I think makes us unique and highly susceptible to those small couple customer outages, but that's still an outage. That's still folks that are losing power for some period of time, and we got to roll a truck to address. So I agree that there needs to be, it's not just how do we trim ourselves out of some of these problems. I would also say DT is probably unique in that 80% of our work is in the back lot. So really it's not road accessible. It's often in deep easements. And there are instances where I just truly believe, hey, we're never really going to be able to trim this area to the point to really see the reliability improvement. that makes sense or that is our target? And is it ever going to be the most cost effective solution? So now that we have at least this like common playing field, right? Everything's trimmed to the same spec, we're maintaining it on cycle. I think it's going to enable us to really identify what are those areas that trimming alone is not going to be the solution, and how do we start partnering with our engineering teams to find alternative solutions.
I know you guys participate in like North American transmission forums, right? Like some of these industry organizations. How much have you utilized that to engage your utility peers, and how active are you guys out in the market, learning from other folks who have similar risk profiles? Like what's been that sort of journey for you?
I feel like this is probably common for many folks, but as utilities, I find that leadership is very quick to say, well, what's the benchmarking say, right? Like what are your peers doing? And that's a completely reasonable ask. What is unique to vegetation, I'm sure you guys see it on your side working with so many different utilities, is well, we all have the same challenges and the same goals of, we want to be cost effective, we want to provide reliable and resilient power to our customers. We want everyone to stay safe and go home at the end of the day. The framework at which we have to tackle those challenges is so unique. It's unique in terms of the infrastructure that we're navigating around, the types of vegetation that we have to address, the workforce that does the work for us. All of those different parameters highly influence how you execute the work, the cost of doing so, how you prioritize your investments. And so I would say it's been very valuable for me to go to peers and say, I have these challenges. And they'll say, yeah, I've got the same challenges. And I'll ask, well, how are you going about solving it? And their path is going to look very, very different from mine, just from the fact that the systemic makeup of our two areas is so different. So I'd say it's helpful in articulating that we're focused on the right things. Sometimes there's some creative solutions that's like, oh, I can take something from that. But it also is at times, defines what's unique to our area and what are some of our challenges. And frankly, what are some of our benefits? I think we, as you said, have enjoyed a very favorable and positive regulatory environment. So that hasn't been one of the uphill battles that we've needed to navigate.
Right. Yeah. What, in your mind, what do you think is your biggest bogey? Like, what is the biggest hurdle for you guys, or maybe even for you when you're looking out, at the field? You're like, this might be a bogey for those guys, but for us, it's definitely X. What's X?
Yeah, and Phil, I'll be curious what your thoughts are, given you've been out and did some field time with us. But I would say, Tej, the dynamic of removals and specifically how we're handling brush and small trees is at this time one of the most defining opportunities for the program. And it really was I don't fault the execution of the surge at all. I think it more was necessary to get that first pass. But if we take a step back and say, hey, what's next and what's that bogey we gotta go after? It's removing the vegetation rather than trimming it. And for DTE, it's unique in that so much of our work is in people's backyards. Oftentimes it's the privacy screen between a person and their neighbor. We do not enjoy strong easements across the territory. It's a dynamic that we're right now readily researching and exploring to really be able to leverage that type of language where appropriate. But it's also an opportunity for us to redefine the conversation with customers around, hey, we are going to be removing this, and here's why, and here are the benefits. And I understand that there's an aesthetic impact to it. However, this is why. And oftentimes I think folks say, no, I want you to just trim a tree. And they don't realize what it's going to look like afterwards, right? And so then they see this tree topped and it just looks ridiculous. And they say, well, this isn't what I wanted at all. And so it really, this is the opportunity. Phil and I have talked about this. We've got to now move more towards salesman mentality of like, how do I sell people on the, yes, I'm going to remove the tree. And I think that at least for us is unique, or at least most punctuated relative to the conversations I have with peers.
Yeah, you spoke about the challenge of so much interaction with the customer.
Yeah,
you're right. You just turn that around. That's an opportunity. So how do we take advantage of the opportunity of being in the face of the customer to drive those other things?
Yeah, Rachel, just, it's interesting you talked about like, the topping of a tree, like until it's happening to you, you don't realize it. But like I've gone through this where in my property, like, because of the risk management, you have to do certain things and it does change the aesthetic. Do you guys have like some type of engagement or replanting type strategy for the homeowners that are going to maybe lose a privacy or a thing? Does the onus fall back on the homeowner to have to replant and make that personal investment, or does the utility have some type of program that encourages it or socializes some of that cost? Like, what does that dynamic look like to help incentivize the homeowner to kind of get on board with the reliability side of things?
So thus far, Tej, we do offer on occasion tree coupons, but those certainly aren't as robust. You think about if you're going to take out kind of a full privacy screen, how do you replace those with arborvitae? What we've offered isn't a one-for-one. As we look towards the future and what's next for the program, there's a lot of discussion around like, what is the right approach? How do you incentivize? I'm sensitive to that cost sharing makes me nervous just from an affordability perspective. But I think that there are other ways that we can be creative and recognize, hey, this impact, and how do we offer some solutions to customers?
No, I just was curious, like, people get very married to their footprints. And, again, this happened in California too. I think one of the big challenges that the utilities had was, getting customers on board and helping them understand, hey, like there's risk here, and that those delays and those back and forths can, result in risk that's in the footprint that is very difficult to get removed. And then, the results can be pretty catastrophic. So, well, I know we're brushing up on a little bit of time here today, Rachel, but we really thank you for taking some time with us today.
Hope you'll consider coming back, Rachel.
I'd be more than happy to.
And for any guests who are watching from Ohio or Ohio State, do you have any Michigan-ness that you need to like let them know? Because I know you went to University of Michigan, so I know you have a strong opinion about this.
I did. I am a proud Wolverine, so I'll say go blue, and let's hope for a better season ahead of us.
Right. Well, thank you so much for today, and it was an absolute pleasure speaking with you. And we'll do some more hopefully when you have some more time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
That's it for this episode of Trees and Lines, brought to you by Iapetus Holdings. If you like the show, please give us a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify. If you have any questions or comments on any of our episodes or ideas for topics or guests, we'd love to hear from you. Please contact us at treesandlines@iapetusllc.com. We'll chat with you soon.